Hi everyone, and welcome to our latest podcast. I'm joined by Jane, Kirsten and Tasha, and my name's Kate, and we're going to be talking about the gender gap. So we have been doing some research into what we still think is an issue today in terms of the financial services industry being quite male dominated. So we've really wanted to kind of get under the skin of the issue. So we've done a bit of research in terms of going into the school. We've surveyed 100 women, and we've also interviewed 10 kind of C-suite senior women just to understand why this is still a problem, but also then turning it into a positive, how we can then turn it into calls to action. So first of all, I know, Jane, you've been looking at kind of life events and how that might impact women and potentially create some barriers for them. What did you find out?
Yeah, so in the life events sort of chapter that we're and the area that we've covered, it's been really interesting actually. So it's sort of split into three areas broadly. So the first one is sort of starting a family. It's been really interesting, the results that we had from the survey, where sort of almost half of the women that responded said that starting a family to some extent has impacted on their career progression. So whether that was like going on maternity, being at the age where you might have a family, or like moving into sort of like having to work flexibly after, were sort of like the key themes coming out as like needing, like impacting on their career progression, not being able to progress, perhaps not getting the role that they wanted to get because of their decision. You know, and obviously not all women will have a family, like it's a personal choice, isn't it? It's not for everybody, but broadly, you know, large majority of women, I think something around 80% of women will have children. So it's a massive impact. If 50% of our survey sort of said that it was impacting their careers, and it's a really wide problem, you know, that a sacrifice someone would need to make because they're having a family, and that they have to like potentially pause like where they want to get to from a career perspective. So some of those results have been fascinating, actually. Some of the responses that we've had, we're looking forward to sharing in the paper.
Yeah, it's really it was really surprising. I think one woman quoted that she didn't get a promotion because she was at a childbearing age.
Yeah.
So they selected a male over herself, and she wasn't even pregnant yet. So there is that kind of bias, I guess, still exists in the industry today, which is just such a shame.
Yeah, and sort of not just having a family either. It's like, you know, we then explored sort of like the flexible working element. So you've got women that want to have a family and they may want to have flexible working after. It's not just when you have a baby, you know, as the child grows up, as the family grows up, you know, flexible working isn't just for those baby years. It's like, it's beyond that. And we all, you know that having a household and a family to run is, you know, lots of different commitments and so on. So we've explored that as well, and understood, got a bit of employer bias towards flexible working as well. And then leading on from that, it's the like the later years. So women are usually looked upon as being the carers of the family that would need to come and like look after elderly relatives and so on. So flexible working is quite broad. It as I was saying, it's not just the baby element, it's as the family grows, and then it's also your extended family that usually the woman is looked upon to care for. So it's been really interesting to hear some of the responses around that as well. And then one of the really hot topics that I think we've all been hearing about, and probably lots of people listening to this have as well, is the menopause. So lots of the respondents to the survey and to the women that we spoke to, just talking to us around, you know, those symptoms that people didn't even know were for the menopause. And it's actually shocking, isn't it, that it's so natural, everyone's going to go through it, but no one's really spoken about it. So from a Simplify point of view, I know we've all spoken about this, and we're so glad and grateful to hear all the awareness that's being raised And I think we've all learned quite a lot from it as well, haven't we, as individuals, but also what we want to do at Simplify as a company to not have this sort of taboo subject that we can't talk about it.
Yeah, we want to remove the stigma, don't we? Because as you say, it's a natural thing that we're all going to go through, and it's really horrible to hear the real negative impacts it has had on women and then their careers. They felt like they've had to step down, or they've had to give up their job because they feel like they, you know, I think Davina said she felt like she had Alzheimer's or, you know, something awful, but it's just that, you know, menopause brain fog that just, you know, takes over your brain. You just can't do anything about.
And one of the ladies that one of the senior women that we spoke to, she sort of said like she'd never been anxious, and then all of a sudden she was just so anxious every day. So yes, you know, it's good that it's going to be, you know, it's looking to be addressed.
Yeah, definitely.
Kind of crazy as well that when we were sharing, or when everyone else was sharing their experiences, obviously I've not got to that point yet, but I had really no awareness of all of the symptoms that you get. So actually it should be more talked about, because as a woman you need to know what challenges you're going to be facing later on. And sort of you could start thinking a little bit early about, you know, how you're going to prepare for that in a way. But yeah, it's kind of crazy that actually it's, you know, 22 and really we're only just starting to talk about all of this. It's yeah, it's crazy.
The angle that I've liked on that though is, it's like for men too, so like I know it's going to affect women, but I think I like the angle of it will, you know, bring men into it too. Let's not make them feel awkward. Let's open the discussion to them as well, because they'll have, you know, family and perhaps wives or partners that they want to support. And also in the workplace, you know, men are managers too, men are colleagues too. So I think it's just like supporting each other. Yeah,
it's a shared problem, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool, thank you, Jane. And Kirsten, so you guys, you and Tasha, you went into a school, didn't you, to chat to the kids around their thoughts. What did you guys find out?
Yeah, so we went in and we spoke to 30 female students to see what their thoughts were, and we also surveyed 100 students, mixed between male and female, to see what their thoughts were about financial services and their career aspirations. So I think one of the big things that came out from me with speaking to the girls was that they were still experiencing barriers to education. So when we spoke to the women, and the women that we surveyed, I expected there to be barriers with that age demographic that we were speaking to, because I think, you know, back when we were, you know, 15, it was the career advice that we were getting was very different, you know, and we weren't having any financial education, I don't think. Well, I don't remember anyway. So I kind of expected those results to come out, that there were barriers. But I think when we spoke to some of the female students, they were still making decisions about their career paths because they thought that they were going to experience barriers and that they weren't going to have the same opportunities as some of the males moving on through. So one female stood out to me particularly because she said that she hadn't chosen the subjects that she wanted to choose because she didn't think that she would have fair opportunity at university and her job when she got on further. So I think that was a key thing. So I was hopeful that we wouldn't still have those barriers in education, but it feels like there still is. And I think that comes down from the gender bias still, in that even in today's outlook, we're still thinking that men do certain jobs and women do other jobs. And to a certain extent, the girls were choosing those careers because they wanted to do childcare, they wanted to be a vet, they wanted to work, you know, own a beauty salon, and they wanted to run a company, and they were quite, you know, wanted to run their own businesses, but they were more of the creative subjects. And I was hoping that we would, you know, there would be a little bit more, that the girls would be wanting to move on into other industries. But I think it came out that actually they didn't know anything about other industries, and financial services wasn't necessarily an area that they knew anything about to even be able to think about a career in those subjects. So that was quite an eye-opener for for us, I think with me and Tasha, we've worked in financial services. We've all worked in financial services. It's such a huge part of what we have to do, running a home. You know, we all need to have financial education and knowledge, and deal with these people that are, you know, dealing with our finances as well. So it was interesting that they didn't know anything about it. So I think that was one of the things that we thought maybe we need to think about, is companies going in and helping out with some career advice with regards to making sure that the kids have all that information to move forward and, you know, ignite a bit of passion in finance. It might ignite a bit of passion to go into financial services.
And it was really interesting that when we said, what do you think financial services is? There was a pause and people were thinking, and then I think someone said, I can't remember if they said banks or if they said like shares, but there was nothing else. They didn't know anything else about financial services and what there is to it. And obviously we all know it's just such a broad sector, and it's so wide, and there's such a variety, and obviously they don't have any insights to that at all. And it's such a shame. There's such a big piece of sort of information missing there that could really help them in deciding what they want to do with their careers, or just they could see that actually there's so much more choice out there, but they just don't have that information.
I think, Kirsten, something we chatted about before was almost the lack of a role model for the female students to sort of think, oh, I want to be like her, or I could see myself being like her, perhaps in the financial services industry or any industry actually.
Yeah, so they said they didn't know of anybody. They would appreciate somebody going in to speak to them. They said they'd like to have an example of somebody that has come from similar backgrounds to themselves, you know, and what career paths they've taken, what their education, and actually how they've got to where they are now. They'd like to, you know, have a real example in front of them to, you know, take something from, to motivate them almost, you know, to see that they can strive to be really successful.
And that's something I think that the role model piece is a consistent theme actually, when we also interviewed the 10 very senior and inspirational women that we spoke to. And I think one in particular really stuck in my head when she said, you know, we need to find role models, not supermodels. We need people that all women in the industry, whatever level you can aspire to be, that you can relate to. And Tasha, I know that you've like really looked into sort of the concept of confidence and imposter syndrome and how that kind of links in with role models. So what have you sort of found out from the research that you've done?
Well, yeah, I think the role model piece, or kind of the lack of role models, is actually really hindering women's confidence in financial services today. Like I mean, if you start at an operational level, you're probably one woman on a team, and there's probably sort of an equal gender split, you know, you kind of get on with the job. But actually, as you sort of move up seniority, you start to see less women, and you don't see those role models. And then actually with that, that's where it starts to hinder confidence, and you start to get those feelings of imposter syndrome. So sort of starting to feel a bit, you know, out of your depth, kind of feeling like you shouldn't be there, like you don't have a place there, or you're kind of, you know, a fraud, as it were. And actually with seniority as well, it seems that those sort of feelings, they actually increase. So there's research out there which shows that they increase, whereas for men, they actually start decreasing with seniority, which is really interesting. But yeah, I definitely think it was a theme. All of the women we spoke to all said, you know, they'd sort of struggled with those imposter syndrome feelings with sort of confidence at some point. But I think we definitely need to see more women in financial services at those senior levels who are role models. And I suppose what I mean by role models is women who have sort of got to that place by just being their authentic selves and kind of acting as they are, sort of embracing their own behaviours and skills, sort of those more sort of female skills as they are. So just by being themselves and not by sort of acting like men, I suppose, or sort of encompassing those sort of traits of a man, just by being themselves, so that other women can actually sort of start to aspire to get to those sort of levels. And it, you know, if you see more women doing those sorts of jobs, it does give you a bit more confidence, a bit more self-belief, and also just a bit more bravery. I think bravery was one of the sort of themes as well. Kirsten, you mentioned before about sort of that gender bias in terms of jobs, but we also have seen sort of gender bias in terms of the messaging about what women can do. So I think one example we were given was that in Primark they were selling t-shirts, and the boys one said be brave, and then I think the girls one said be nice or be kind. And it's kind of like, you have in a world in financial services, if all of those men are sort of being brave, yeah, they're going to do well, they're going to get into those senior positions. If you're telling just the girls to be nice, or how's that going to help? That's really going to hinder their progress. So yeah, it's a really interesting topic, and I don't think it's a topic that there's many sort of numbers or sort of quantitative data around, but we've sort of pulled out some really interesting anecdotal stuff. So yeah, there's definitely a lot to explore there.
Definitely. And I think it's not, you know, it has to be all women and all men. It's about diversity, isn't it? I think that's one of the key things that really came out of all of the research, was everyone is just wanting a bit of diversity, because then there's diversity of thought, and then there's more creativity, and it just creates a better working environment for everyone, and a more successful industry, I suppose, as a whole. Fantastic. Thank you, ladies. Great to chat to you. So our white paper will be out in a few weeks' time. Keep your eye out. We've also got a panel discussion with some of the senior women that we have interviewed to get their views, in particular on what needs to change in the industry, and to kind of get their buy-in and backing on that. So we really look forward to sharing our research and findings with you, and continue to change the industry in a better way. Thanks very much for joining us.